It was a regular Tuesday at the clinic, the kind where the coffee machine becomes your best friend and the clock seems to be stuck. I'm a psychologist here, dealing with folks who carry more baggage than a loaded freight train. It's tough, but rewarding. That's when Patrick walked in, lugging his dad along, who looked like he'd seen better days. "Hey, I need some help here. It's like a maze, and my dad needs to see the doctor pronto," Patrick said, his voice laced with worry but trying to keep it cool. "Sure thing," I replied, putting down my third cup of coffee. "Follow me." As we walked, Patrick kept thanking me like I was doing him a huge favor. "Appreciate this. Dad's been off his game, and I'm just trying to keep the ship from sinking, you know," he said. "You're doing good. It's not easy, but hey, you're not alone," I reassured him. We got to the doctor's office, and I assured him they were in good hands. "Thanks. I'll call you Samuel," I said. "Thanks, Samuel. I owe you one. Let me buy you coffee sometime," Patrick offered, scratching the back of his neck, looking a bit awkward. "Sure, but I warn you, I'm a tough critic when it comes to coffee," I laughed. "Challenge accepted," he grinned. Just like that, we hit it off. We started hanging out, first coffee, then movies, and the occasional dinner. It was easy with him. Like I didn't have to try hard to be someone I'm not. Patrick was all about keeping things real. No airs about him. He worked in his family's laundry business. Nothing glamorous. But he was proud of what they built. One thing led to another, and our casual meetings turned into something more. Patrick was a breath of fresh air. His straightforwardness, the way he'd call it as he saw it. No sugarcoating. It was refreshing, especially in my line of work where everything's about reading between the lines. "Samuel, you know I've been thinking," Patrick said one evening as we were closing down another burger joint. "We're good together, like really good," I smirked, sipping on the last of my milkshake. "Took you long enough to notice," he laughed, that easy, carefree sound. "So what do you say? You want to make this a regular thing?" "Patrick, I thought you'd never ask. Yes, let's see where this train wreck goes," I teased, bumping his shoulder with mine. A year into dating Patrick, things got pretty serious pretty fast. We were like two peas in a pod, dreaming big and laughing through it all. One chilly evening, wrapped up in layers, we were at our favorite spot in the city, a little bench overlooking the river. That's when Patrick, in his no-nonsense way, popped the question. "So Samuel, I've been thinking," he started, his breath forming little clouds in the cold air. "How about we make this official? You, me, a couple of kids running around?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Kids, huh? You sure you can handle that with you?" "I'd handle a zoo," he shot back with a grin. I took a moment, looking out at the water, the future suddenly feeling so near and close. "Yes, Patrick, let's dive into that zoo together." The decision to marry Patrick was the easy part. Living it out now was going to be a challenge. We decided on a small, cozy wedding and started talking about our future, dreaming of a big family. Patrick was on board, his dreams as big as mine. We settled in a rented apartment, squirreling away whatever we could for a down payment on a house. But not everything was smooth sailing. The real storm brewed with Patrick's parents, especially his mom, Mrs. Brandon. The Brandons ran a laundry and dry cleaning business a stone's throw from their place. It was their pride and joy, a family affair through and through. After the wedding, Mrs. Brandon, with her usual flair for the dramatic, made an offer. "Why don't you two move in with us? Save some money, help out with the business," she suggested one evening, her tone suggesting it was more of an order than a suggestion. Patrick and I exchanged looks. We had already discussed this and knew where we stood. "Thanks, Mrs. P, but we're good in our place. Plus, my job is on the other side of town." I tried to let her down easy, but Mrs. Brandon wasn't having it. "Nonsense. Samuel can quit her job. We need her here in the family business. It's high time she started contributing," she pushed, her eyes locking onto mine like a hawk. I took a deep breath, keeping my cool. "I respect what you built with the laundry, really I do, but I'm a psychologist. I help people too, in a different way. I can't just give that up." It was like talking to a brick wall. Mrs. Brandon's disapproval was palpable, her remarks getting sharper by the day. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't want to fold clothes for a living when I could be helping people sort through their mental and emotional laundry instead. Patrick tried to mediate, but there was a clear tension every time the topic came up. Life's got a funny way of throwing curveballs, and just when Patrick and I thought we had things kind of sorted, his dad's health took a nosedive and then he passed away. It hit Patrick like a ton of bricks. He was tight with his dad and Mrs. Brandon. Well, she was a wreck, clinging to Patrick for every little thing. That's when the real test began. Patrick came to me one evening looking more serious than I'd seen him in a while. "Samuel, babe, we got to talk. It's about my mom." I knew that tone. "What's up? Is your mom okay?" He took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair, a sure sign he was stressed. "Not really. She's not doing great and she's not handling it well. I'm worried about leaving her alone." I sat down, bracing myself for what I knew was coming. "You're thinking we should move in with her, aren't you?" Patrick nodded, looking guilty. "I know it's a lot to ask, Samuel. It's just, I don't see another way." The idea of living with Mrs. Brandon, with her constant digs and that my way or the highway attitude, had me breaking out in hives, but I saw the desperation in Patrick's eyes. And damn it, I love the guy. "Look, Patrick, I'm not going to lie. The thought of living with your mom gives me nightmares, but I get it. Family's family. We'll figure it out." Moving in was rough. Mrs. Brandon had an opinion on everything, from how I dressed to how I cooked. It was like walking on eggshells covered in landmines. One evening, after a particularly long day at the clinic, followed by an even longer commute, I came home to find Mrs. Brandon in full critique mode. "That's not how you fold the towels, Samuel. And dinner." "Well, I suppose it'll have to do," she remarked. I clenched my teeth, counting to 10 in my head. "Mrs. Brandon, I'm doing my best here. Maybe you could show me how you'd like things done," I suggested. "Well, if I have to do everything myself, what's the point of you being here?" she huffed. Patrick walked in just then, catching the tail end of the conversation. "Mom, come on. Samuel is helping out a lot. Let's give it a rest, huh?" Mrs. Brandon shot me a look that could curdle milk but backed off. That night, Patrick and I had a long talk. "Samuel, I know this is tough. I see it and I'm sorry, but we're in this together, okay? We'll make it work," he promised, exhausted but together. "But Patrick, something's gotta give. I can't keep doing this dance with your mom. It's like she's got it out for me," I confessed. He squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out, babe. We always do." 6 months in, and I'd had my fill of getting an earful from Patrick and his mom every day like clockwork. Their gripes and digs were my daily bread. I couldn't do anything right according to them. So I figured maybe if I wasn't around as much, they'd find someone else to nag. I cut down my hours at the clinic to a part-time gig and started putting in shifts at the laundry in the afternoons. Patrick seemed up for it, saying it was a smart move, but then he dropped on me that he wouldn't be paying me a dime. "Let's not muck about with the taxes and all that," he says. "You'll just use the family account when you need to." Sounded a bit off, but I let it slide. I was more into smoothing things over than counting pennies. That was the plan. Clinic in the morning, drowning in suds by afternoon. Patrick reckoned it was a win-win. I wasn't so sure, but I was willing to give it a shot, hoping it might ease the constant bickering at home. Plus, it'd be a chance to get a real look at the family business and see what all the fuss was about from the inside. I threw myself into that laundry business, heart and soul. Before I knew it, I was spotting gaps and thinking up ways to pull in more folks. It wasn't just about washing and drying. It was about giving people a reason to choose us over the next place. But when I laid my cards on the table, hoping Patrick would see the potential, he shut me down. "I've been in this game since I was knee-high. What do you know about running a laundry?" he scoffed. I was gutted, but worse, I started noticing the numbers weren't adding up. Fewer customers, more complaints. It was a sinking ship, and I wasn't about to go down without a fight. I tried talking to his mom, thinking maybe she'd get it. I even found the perfect spot next door to expand, but no dice. Patrick was her golden boy and could do no wrong. It was like talking to a brick wall. But I wasn't done yet. I gathered up all the evidence I could, graphs showing our dipping income, screenshots of scathing reviews online, you name it. "Look at this," I said, shoving the papers in his face. "We're bleeding money and people are talking, none of it good. If we don't shake things up, we're headed straight for the gutter." He barely glanced at the papers before tossing them aside. "You're clueless," he snapped. "This is my turf. Do you think a few bad reviews and a dip in cash flow mean we're tanking? You'll know the first thing about running a laundry." His words hit like a slap. I'd laid it all out, clear as day, but he was too stubborn to see it. It wasn't just about the laundry anymore. It was about respect, about listening to each other. And right then, I realized maybe we weren't on the same page after all. Maybe we weren't even in the same book. I watched helplessly as our numbers continued to slide. Every attempt at conversation was met with, "Samuel, just focus on the work. Leave the thinking to me." Hey, pause for a moment. Would you care to support us? Like this video and subscribe for more. Now let's dive back into the story. The final straw came during one of our discussions where Mrs. Brandon accused me of trying to torpedo the business with my wild ideas. "Just trying to help," I protested, but it fell on deaf ears. Patrick stood by, a silent witness to his mother's tirade. It was clear where his loyalties lay, and apparently they weren't with me or the sinking ship that was our laundry business. After months of juggling clinic hours and the laundry, with my spirit bent but not broken under the weight of constant sniping from Patrick and his mom, I hit my limit. It wasn't one big thing that did it, but 1,000 little cuts, each one stinging more than the last. Every day felt like navigating a minefield, but I kept my head down, thinking maybe, just maybe, things would get better. That was until my birthday rolled around. A day that should have been about a little joy, a little break from the endless grind. I left a note for Patrick in the morning, thinking he'd at least remember the date. "Out for the morning, back soon." Simple, right? I treated myself to a new dress, something I hadn't done in ages, then hit the salon hair, nails, makeup, the works. It was my day, after all, or so I thought. The moment I stepped back into the house, I could feel the storm brewing. Patrick and his mom, Mrs. Brandon, were there, faces like thunderclouds waiting for me. "Where the hell have you been?" Patrick barked the second I walked in. "The laundry's been a mess without you, and there's no breakfast." I blinked, taken aback. "It's my birthday," I thought. His mother cut in, her voice sharp as a knife. "Your birthday? Do you think that's some excuse to slack off? We needed you here. You're just lazy and clueless, not even fit to be a housekeeper." I felt my heart sink. Not even a happy birthday, nothing. I turned to Patrick, searching his face for some support, some sign he'd stand up for me. "Patrick, you too? You think I'm just lazy?" He wouldn't meet my eye. "Mom's right, Samuel. We can't have you running off whenever you feel like it. There's work to be done." That was the straw that broke the camel's back. All the patience, all the effort I'd put into making this work, it just crumbled. "You know what? I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Mrs. Brandon clapped her hands, a gleeful, cruel sound. "Finally, we're getting rid of her." Then, as if she hadn't already twisted the knife enough, she added, "You'll be paying for your stay here for the past 3 years, of course." I laughed. It was that or cry. "I think it's you who owes me for all the unpaid work, the holidays, the sick days. Let's see how that adds up, shall we?" Her face dropped. The room went silent, the air thick with tension. Patrick looked between us, clearly at a loss. The conversation spiraled from there. Accusations flew past grievances aired. It was ugly, raw, and painful, a litany of all the ways we failed each other laid bare. I bent over backward for this family, for this business, and this is the thanks I get? I said, my voice rising with each word. "And what about me? What about what I've given up?" Patrick shot back, anger and something like regret flashing in his eyes. "We're talking past each other, Patrick. I don't even recognize us anymore," I replied, the fight draining out of me. The talk of divorce, of debts and dues, it all just underscored how far apart we'd grown. The love that had once bound us together had been stretched thin, frayed by neglect and misunderstanding. Walking away from Patrick and his mom, I had a head full of steam and a heart full of hurt. But beneath all that, there was this tiny, stubborn spark of something like hope, or maybe it was just spite. Either way, it was enough to get me moving. First thing, I found myself a little apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine, all mine. The silence was deafening at first, a stark contrast to the constant bickering and criticism I'd gotten used to. But I filled it up with plans and dreams, louder and more vibrant than any argument. I remember sitting there on a secondhand couch, surrounded by unpacked boxes, when my best friend Kayla dropped by. She found me surrounded by papers, my laptop open to a dozen tabs. "What's all this?" Kayla asked, raising an eyebrow as she picked up a stack of printouts about business loans and laundry equipment. "I'm starting my own laundry business," I declared, more to convince myself than her. Kayla whistled low, impressed. "That's a bold move, Samuel, going head-to-head with Patrick and his mom." I nodded, feeling the resolve solidify within me. "Yeah, they think they've seen the last of me, but I'm not done. Not by a long shot. I found a spot for rent right next to their laundry. It's perfect." "Isn't that a bit direct?" Kayla asked, a hint of concern in her voice. "Direct is exactly what I'm going for," I replied. "I've got ideas, Kayla, good ones, and I know I can make this work." I said the words, tumbling out with a passion I hadn't felt in months. Kayla smiled, her support unwavering. "Well, then you're going to need a business plan and probably a drink. I'll grab the wine, you start brainstorming." So we did. We outlined everything from business hours to services offered, differentiating and creating my future laundry from the one run by Patrick and his mom. "I want to create a space that's more than just a place to wash clothes," I explained. "A community hub with top-notch service and a personal touch. Offer something they don't." Kayla suggested sipping her wine, like a loyalty program, or better yet, a guarantee for lost items. "That's genius!" I exclaimed, the idea sparking excitement. "And I can set up a play area for kids, maybe even a small cafe corner. Make it a place where people want to spend time." We worked into the night, fueled by wine and the thrill of creation. By the time Kayla left, I had a solid plan and a fire in my belly. It was more than just a business venture. It was my shot at proving them wrong, at proving to myself that I was more than what they saw. After the dust settled from the divorce, I dove headfirst into my plan. I found the empty spot next to Patrick's laundry and snagged it. It was a mess, sure, but it had potential. I poured everything into fixing it up, buying the best washers and dryers I could afford, and stocking up on top-notch cleaning supplies. The place started shaping up, and I opened the doors with a mix of dread and hope. At first, it was like shouting into the void. Folks just kept on walking past Patrick's, sticking to what they knew, but I wasn't about to fold that easy. I made my place welcoming, with a coffee machine for the adults, a small play area for the kids, and even a couple of slot machines for a bit of fun. I stayed open round the clock, added security cameras, and made damn sure everyone's clothes were treated like treasure. "Listen, I'll give you the best service you've ever had," I'd tell anyone who wandered in, half curious, half skeptical. "Not happy with the clean? It's on the house. But when you see the results, you'll want to come back, guaranteed." Word started getting around, thanks to the effort I put into every detail and every customer. Reviews on the internet began flipping from skeptical to stellar. "Never seen my whites so white," one said. "The coffee is a nice touch," said another. "Love the spot for the kids," chimed in a third. Before I knew it, my little laundry was buzzing, lines forming even in the early hours. My laundry became the go-to spot, not just for the quality of the clean, but for the community I was building. People didn't just come to wash their clothes, they came for a chat, a cup of coffee, or just a break from their day. It was more than a laundry. It was a place people looked forward to visiting. The success was sweet, not going to lie, but the best part was knowing I did it my way, with integrity and a hell of a lot of hard work. Patrick and his mom could keep their old-fashioned ways and their grudges. I was moving forward, one satisfied customer at a time. The day it all came to a head, the air was thick with the scent of detergent and success. That's when Patrick and his mother, like two storm clouds ready to burst, charged into my sunny day. Patrick was the first to launch into the tirade. "You've got some nerve, Samuel, siphoning off our customers with your undercut prices and fancy extras. What's the game, huh?" I didn't flinch. Experience had taught me calmness was a weapon. "No game, Patrick, just good business. I'm offering what people want and need. Can you say the same?" His mother, ever the fire starter, piped up with venom. "You're a thief and a liar, making us look bad, stealing our hard-earned customers. You've turned this into a personal vendetta." I sighed, leaning against the freshly wiped counter. Mrs. Brandon, let's get one thing straight. I haven't stolen anything. People come here because they're tired of your hard-earned neglect. It's as simple as that. Patrick's face turned into a mix of anger and something else, perhaps a dawning realization. We were doing just fine before you started this crusade, he spat out. Crusade? I echoed, incredulous. Patrick, all I did was fill a gap you left wide open. I offered suggestions, remember? You both decided I was the enemy for trying to help. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment settling heavily. Mrs. Brandon, in a last desperate bid, shifted tactics. Fine then. If you're so successful, hire us. Our laundry is dying. We're swamped in debt. I let out a dry laugh. Hire you? After everything? I think it's time for you both to leave. My customers don't need this kind of drama. They knew they had lost, this battle. Their shoulders slumped as they turned to leave. Patrick paused at the door, a complex look crossing his face. A mixture of regret and resignation. This isn't over, Samuel, he said. But it lacked conviction. But it was over, at least for me. I had built something out of the ashes of their disdain, a place that brought a little bit of joy and cleanliness into people's lives. And as they walked out the door, I turned back to my bustling laundry, a smile playing on my lips. This chapter of my life was closed, and I was already looking forward to the next. Let's conclude the story shortly. The bustling sounds of my laundry, the happy chatter of customers, and the rhythmic hum of the washing machines filled the space. I had built a haven, a place of solace and service, a testament to my strength and resilience. Looking back, I realized that leaving Patrick and his mother was the best decision I ever made. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Their negativity and disapproval had become a suffocating blanket, and I had to break free. Now, with my own thriving business, I was finally living my life on my terms. I learned valuable lessons about love, family, and the importance of standing up for myself. The experience had been painful, but it had also been liberating. I was no longer the timid, insecure woman I had been when I first met Patrick. I was stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever before. As I watched my customers leave, their faces beaming with satisfaction, I felt a deep sense of pride. I had created something beautiful, something that brought joy to others, and that, I knew, was more rewarding than anything I could have ever imagined. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me." If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.